Hello and welcome back to Inside Update, where every other week we are catching up about important headlines across Connecticut. This show is brought to you by the InsideInvestigator.org team. We are a nonprofit newsroom focused on rooting out corruption in Connecticut through investigative journalism. And today, I'm joined by Mark Fitch, Catherine Revelo, and Brandon Whiting. All three are investigative reporters for Inside Investigator, and we have three topics for you today. First, Connecticut is moving closer to getting rid of PFAS forever chemicals. Brandon, I'm going to make you say whatever PFAS stands for. Mark took a closer look at a financial investigation in Colchester that set off a political firestorm. And finally, Catherine, you covered efforts to exempt some law enforcement records from FOIA, and I'm very curious about that as well. Let's dig in, though, with PFAS forever chemicals in the Senate, I believe, right, Brandon? What's going on?
Yep. So basically, it would be a bill that greatly limits kind of the sale of PFASs, and PFAS stands for per and polyfluorinated substances. And so they've been used for several decades now in a lot of consumer products because it's very good at repelling water. So rain boots, any Gore-Tex, anything used in a lot of like furniture, shower curtains, just anything that could basically can benefit from having, that water repellent element to it. Unfortunately, it's highly carcinogenic, causes lots of different health problems, and they're called forever chemicals because once they're in the environment, they basically stay there forever. And once they're in your body, they're going to outlast you. So as it's obviously a problem and kind of exacerbating the problem. Last year, there were several Connecticut municipalities that have tested their water and they tested positive for PFAS. So earlier this year, the Attorney General filed a lawsuit against, I believe, close to 30 different kind of chemical manufacturers that the state thinks are to blame for these PFAS contaminations. And so, yeah, they're moving forward with the bill. It would essentially, in 2026, all kind of non-essential consumer products, so clothing, carpets, cleaning products, cookware, cosmetics, floss, fabric treatments, children's products, menstruation products, ski products, furniture, textile furnishings, all of those things containing PFAS will be banned from sale but by 2026. And as for rainproof apparel, because it's kind of, I imagine manufacturers are going to have to think long and hard about different ways to make rainproof apparel. They're kind of getting a little bit more of a grace period. So sellers will be required to disclose that there's PFAS in them beginning in 2026, but will be banned from selling them by 2028. And by 2032, the bill aims to ban PFAS containing products entirely, with exceptions being made for individual products, that the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection deems it's kind of essential to the product. So yeah, that is the bill. It kind of makes distinctions also between intentionally and unintentionally added PFAS in products, which I think is interesting. So it'll only require testing and reporting for products that have intentionally added PFAS. In items where it's added deliberately, obviously to perform a specific function, but the commissioner does reserve the right, if he thinks that a product isn't marketing itself as containing PFAS, they can basically request that the manufacturers test it for PFAS and send those results to the commissioner.
So we're getting a little transparency, getting to find out more what's in these products. I mean, I'm not sure, are things labeled with PFAS distinctions now by anyone, or is this kind of the first step to labeling stuff?
I know that they said that basically it's taking inspiration from bills already passed in Minnesota and Maine. So I'm not sure how many states, if those are the only two states that currently have kind of bills this strict against PFAS, or if those are quite literally the only two. But as it stands right now, I know you'll see the opposite is true. A lot of times, if you look at products in the grocery store, you'll see PFAS free on different things, whether they're water bottles or stuff like that. But I don't know if it's widespread now that I don't think many companies would take it into their own hands to say, yes, we do sell these cancer-causing chemicals. Please buy us anyway. So
Yeah,
it is
I,
good that there's going to be an extra level of consumer transparency there. Yeah.
I tell you, people are very, there are groups of people out there that are very, diligent and wound up about these chemicals. And which they're also used in a lot of firefighting equipment and
Mhm.
like firefighter foam and stuff like that. And there was an issue where they had to put out a fire at Bradley Airport a few years ago, and they sprayed a lot of this foam down. And there was a lot of concerns about that foam and those chemicals getting into the water streams, and everything like that. But years ago, I wrote an article about some concerns raised around solar panels and PFAS. And it was just kind of a one-off article. It was something that it came up during testimony. I thought it was interesting. I did a story on it. I still get phone calls and emails about that story. It was from like 3 or 4 years ago, but people still contact me being like, "What more do you know?" And I'm like, "I don't really know anybody. Everything I know was in the story." So I guess there was some concern at the Department of Public Health about PFAS related to solar panels as well. I'm not sure how far that went, and please don't reach out to me for more information about it. I don't have any. It
It's
was just,
Brandon now. Everyone should
yeah, it
reach
was
out to
yeah,
Brandon now
yeah.
about PFAS.
Well, Brandon, yeah.
Sure, sure. I guess I'll be the PFAS guy. But yeah, I mean, that definitely, you got the idea that there is a lot of interest just by how bipartisan everything was. I mean, Democrats were all for this bill, Republicans were all for this bill. There was a little bit of trepidation behind, how hard will this be on our manufacturers, but it seems like they really want to take their time, both the committee and now that it's being moved to the Senate floor, with really kind of basically making the process for reporting and testing as easy on the manufacturers as possible. But yes, I believe it was Stephen Harding. He had said, here, let me find the quote. No, not there. Basically, he was saying that he gets calls about his office gets calls about this all the time, and other people that he has talked to, other legislators, there's a lot of concern from the public, and kind of understandably so. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to hear that their water authority has been contaminated with cancer-causing chemicals that are impossible practically to get out of the environment. So, I'm sure that's ruffled more than a few feathers across the state, and it looks that the state is actually going to be kind of coming down on it as hard as it can. So, yeah,
Here's to clean water. That would be a step in the right direction for sure.
I would say so.
Yes. I want to move on to Colchester. Mark, you did a bunch of different things here. I feel like this was written over the course of at least a full week, maybe a little bit more with various phone calls and information. But it was a financial investigation, a political firestorm. There's a lot going on in Colchester. Could you bring us up to speed, at least from the 30,000-foot level? I know there's a lot in there.
Yeah, as they say, it's complicated. So this story centers around Mary Williamson. She was the director of finance for the town of Colchester for a very short period of time. I mean, she was made finance director in February of 23, and pretty much by December, she was handed her walking papers. So during the course of a town audit that she was doing, she found some questionable spending by the town clerk, that's an elected position, related to hotel stays for town clerk conferences. Basically, she was using this account, which is dedicated, it's a dedicated account for the preservation of historical documents. She was using the money from that account to pay for these hotel stays, at hotels around Connecticut over the course of years. They think they have a conference maybe, once a year or something like that for the town clerks. But, according to Williamson's, as she looked into it, this wasn't allowable. She had reportedly found some other things too, but, it never really made it into the final investigation. Well, she brought these charges to the town's first selectman. At the time, it was a guy named Andreas Bisbikos. He was a bit of a firebrand. He had a very confrontational kind of political style. More than a few people who I spoke with off the record kind of likened him to Donald Trump in the way he approached things. So anyway, she brought it to him. He launches a full investigation. The whole report and all the supporting documents are on Colchester's page. And he scheduled a special Board of Selectmen meeting to present the findings of the investigation. Now that meeting, oh my God, we cover a lot of state stuff inside Investigator, but I can tell you historically what I've found is that small town politics are a blood sport and just make everything going on at the state capitol seem really nice and cozy. But when you get into these small towns, it is brutal. These people know each other and they have thoughts. And so this special town meeting, it took place, I think it was September 6th. I mean, it devolved almost immediately into insults and name calling and getting the police and more people showing up to fight back. And it's linked in the story. It's highly recommended viewing. You won't be bored throughout the entire thing. And it's an hour and a half. I watched the whole thing because I was just like, oh, this is something. So that whole thing devolves into a nightmare. The Attorney General's office gets brought into this because they have the power to investigate town clerks and potentially remove them if there's some issues. So the Attorney General's office is looking into this issue. Now, what happens is that Mr. Bisbikos he loses his election bid in 2023 to a Democrat guy named Bernie Dendler. And Dendler comes in, and pretty much one thing he does, it's questionable as to whether or not Mary Williamson, as the finance director, was a part of the municipal employees union. Traditionally, that position had been in the union, but that was during a time when they had a chief financial officer who oversaw finance directors for both the town and the Board of Education. They haven't had a chief financial officer since 2022, so the argument was made that she was not actually in the union anymore. And Bernie Dendler, the new first selectman, entered into a memorandum of understanding with the union to specifically say that she is not in it. And they signed that, and the very next day, she was put on administrative leave, and that was late December. She's still on administrative leave pending termination. I mean, they've tried to bring her back in for investigative interviews. She has refused, saying that she should have union representation. Either way, they have an acting finance director, her on paid administrative leave, and definitely out of a job, I'd say. And, some people feel that this was political retribution for, what happened in the course of her 10 months working as finance director. The Colchester had been experiencing some financial difficulties, but those predated her showing up. So it's hard not to see this as, okay, you have a new administration come in, understandable. And frankly, the job, which was advertised as non-union, I should say as well, but the job also didn't contain any kind of just cause clause in her employment contract. So it's an at-will position. So from what I understand, Williamson has filed complaints with the State Board of Labor Relations alleging that she should not have been kicked out of the union, that this was all wrong. And she also filed a complaint against the town itself for the way they're handling her job situation. So it was a complicated story. There were a lot of moving parts in this. Whether she's in the union, when she was in the union, when she got out of the union, all that kind of stuff. It's all, there's a lot of documentation there. The union was arguing that she was a part of it, and then changed their mind, said no, she's not. And then, frankly, right after she was handed her walking papers, they signed a big new union contract. The town signed a new union contract with the same union that she thought she was in. So there's a lot of balls in the air here. There was obviously a lot of bitter feelings in Colchester, and a number of people I talked to off the record thought that she did a good job as finance director, but I think she got swept up into something that was bigger than herself. And, she had some other battles with not only the town clerk, but the town tax collector as well, that went public. And there was just a lot of smearing going on in 2023 in the town of Colchester.
Man, what a battle. That's fascinating. It was a great read too. Like you did a great job bringing it through. I think it was what, 2,000 words? Like it ended up being a significant piece too. This isn't like, as you could tell from what Mark just said, this isn't a 250 word news piece that was put out.
No, it probably could have been longer. It just kept going.
It was also, I mean, a testament to local tipsters. I think this is something that we like to hear from. People who are going to reach out and take the time to provide documentation and evidence. I mean, stuff like this happens frequently. I mean, obviously this is a exceptional circumstance, but I from what we've seen, I mean, this is far from the first time. We get tips frequently that lay out very complicated scenarios, as you said, in the bloodbath of local politics. And I'll plug it to say, please send us those, because we're aware Connecticut's lost 50% of their newsrooms since 2004, and there's a good chance that your community is not getting the in-depth coverage that it might need to bring these sorts of things to light. And that's obviously part of what we do, but that really does start with a conversation and someone willing to send us an email or give us a call and start talking about what's going on in the community.
Like I say to everybody, there's 169 towns in Connecticut, and so it's impossible to watch them all. And so if there's something going on, please reach out to us and let us know.
Absolutely. Or donate so we can hire 169 reporters. And that is another way that we could tackle this problem. We're open to it. No hesitation on that front.
Absolutely.
All right. Unless there are other comments there, I'd like to move on to the FOIA exemptions. And Catherine, first of all, I want to say Sunshine Week was last week. And you just went on a tear of FOIA related stories and digging into stuff. So this is kind of continuing to push on that. I know it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart. You've covered it for a long time. What's going on with law enforcement records in this case?
Yeah, so we covered last week during Sunshine Week 8 different bills that are currently before the legislature this session that would affect FOIA in some way. And this is the first one so far that there's been further action beyond a public hearing on. And basically, the original text of this bill would make 2 changes to FOIA into exemptions for law enforcement records that are in FOIA. The first of them would get rid or would narrow the exemption for that's not the right way to say that. Let me say that again. The first of them applies to signed witness statements. So right now, the words signed witness statements appear in FOIA, and those are exempt from disclosure. But this bill, the original text, would get rid of the word sign and just make witness statements exempt under FOIA. So basically, if you wanted to get a witness statement from a police report, you wouldn't be able to do it. So it would change the law that way. The other thing that it would do is add to the types of records that you can't get. So records that depict a scene of an accident involving a minor, a victim of domestic or sexual abuse, a victim of homicide or suicide, or someone who has died during an accident. would be added to the list of records that are exempt if they might reasonably be seen to invade either a victim's privacy or the family of the victim if that victim is deceased. So during the public hearing, state agencies kind of split on whether this bill was good or bad. The Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, like the bill, they actually put the bill forward. Their main argument was this would bring FOIA into alignment with the Police Accountability Act and certain, exemptions and rules around records that it has already put into place. The judicial branch came out kind of neither in favor of the bill or against it, but it was concerned that the scene of the accident language, which is not already in the statute and would be added into the statute, could narrow current exemptions that protects victims' privacy. And then the Office of the Victim Advocate also had similar concerns about that language. The FOIC, the Freedom of Information Commission, came out in opposition to the bill, arguing basically that it was overly broad and this could exempt a lot of records and, make transparency not as easy to obtain under the law. And Office of the Public Defender basically had a similar argument. And they were concerned about the portion of the bill that would remove the word sign from it, making all witness statements exempt under the law. So when this went to committee last week, it was placed on the consent calendar, so it will be moving forward to the legislature for a full vote. According to the chair of that committee, after the public hearing, FOIC and DESPP met and kind of worked out language that addressed both of their concerns. So the new version of the bill, which is what will move forward to the legislature, they are both behind. We don't yet know what that language is because it's not public facing yet, which, obviously is the big concern right now.
With the
what do you know? They're doing things in secret together.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that FOIA-able, those conversations? Is that because now I'm curious?
Yeah, if there were in email records, they'd certainly be FOIA-able.
All right. Oh, nah, maybe we'll have to do some digging. I am curious about the witness statement bit, though, and maybe this is resolved by the time we get to it and it's a nothing burger. But when I think about that, it strikes me that if we're not getting witness statements, you're kind of just getting the official story. You're not getting the background or the multiple viewpoints, which, at least from a journalistic perspective, you three have done a wonderful job kind of finding those different angles and the different takes, right? Your version, their version, and the truth, as we've talked about. Is that concerning, or is the witness statement thing just like personally identifiable information, or do we lose all of that witness testimony for a potential situation?
Right. Well, I think the implication and certainly the concern was that all of that information would be, we would lose, right? Obviously, there are already exemptions to FOIA that make certain information that is contained in witness statements unavailable to the public. So that's where things like redactions are supposed to come in, instead of just pulling that off the table so that the public can't get any of that information.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I'm guessing we'll have to read that full text when it becomes available, and maybe that'll be a story, but otherwise maybe we'll just bring it up in 2 weeks too and mention it on here just as a follow-up if it's not if it doesn't rise to the occasion of a full news story. This is great, though. I really appreciate all of you and your work over the last couple of weeks. To all of those watching and listening, of course, this is just 3 stories of the several dozen that have been published, including, I'll throw out there, Trisha is out teaching a class today. So she is not here to talk about her Inside Oddities piece about the Cushing brain collection at Yale. There's some pretty amazing pictures in there and a very fascinating backstory about the Cushing Center. I would highly recommend. Joe did a great job with the visuals as well. So definitely check that out. Catherine, Mark, Brandon, any other topics or notes, favorite stories, please, for information to the public that you want to make known here?
No, I think I'm pretty good right now.
All right. Send these 3 tips. Send them tips.
Right.
The more the merrier. And as always, make them detailed because that makes everyone's life easier. So, of course, too, if you like what we do, please consider becoming a donor to Inside Investigator. You can go to insideinvestigator.org, hit that donate button up in the top right-hand corner to join the ranks of those who also support our nonprofit journalism. We will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, be well, stay safe, and stay informed.